December is one of my favorite months to go on a cruise, and it has nothing to do with the holidays. I wanted to spell out exactly why planning a cruise in December is actually a really good idea. Hey everyone, it's Matt from RoyalCaribbeanBlog.com. When I plan my cruises out, there's a lot of reasons why I might pick a cruise in one part of the year or another. But December, especially the first 2 weeks of the month, is one of my favorite times to go on a cruise for a lot of good reasons. In fact, I often look for excuses to book cruises. This year, as an example, I actually have, 3 cruises in the month of December, but I'm not going to even count the one that's in Christmas week. Christmas week, New Year's, listen, everybody and their mother can go on a cruise that week, but we're not even going to talk about that because that is a high demand, high cost time of year to go on a cruise. Really, what I'm talking about is earlier in the year, although some of these truths that I'm about to drop on all of you certainly apply to the rest of the month as well. First and foremost, the great thing about going on a cruise in December is hurricane season is finally over. Hurricane season begins on June 1st and actually runs all the way through the end of November. Now, November hurricanes are pretty rare, but there can still be tropical disturbances and things out there anyway. Now, I would say that once you get past about mid-October, especially right around Halloween, the chances of a storm drop precipitously. But when you're talking about a cruise in December, unlike a cruise, say, in September or October, when you can find also really good prices on cruises, December is pretty much guaranteed not to have a storm to deal with, and that just means one less concern. Again, remember, when we're talking about hurricane season, that isn't to say that bad weather doesn't exist in other months of the year. I'm just simply saying that there's not going to be a chance of a hurricane in December, probably. Now, I mentioned earlier about the first 2 weeks of December, and the reason is because you can find some of the best deals during this time. The first 2 weeks of December are a time of year that's kind of like the middle ground between a lot of things happening. Think about it. Right before these 2 weeks of December, you've got Thanksgiving. And Thanksgiving, people take vacations and they're out and doing whatever. Then you have, after that, Christmas and New Year's. Again, more time off built into the school calendar and work schedules. So those first 2 weeks of December are a time of year that a lot of people are pretty much unwilling to take time off away from school or work because they're either just got vacation or they're about to get more built-in vacation. So why front load your vacation like that? The result is there's far less demand for cruises this time of year, and this is kind of a pattern we see throughout the year. Certain times, like basically the entire month of January except for New Year's Eve, the first 2 weeks of February, most of May, most of September, and most of October fall into this pattern as well. But what I like about December, and we're talking about more about this a little later in this video, is again the combination of good weather, still warm temperatures in the Caribbean, and of course great prices. So when it comes to booking a cruise, the first 2 weeks of December, certainly, even if you're booking a cruise a year or two in advance, you're probably going to find lower prices here. But it's also a really good time for a last minute deal out there. It is not uncommon for the last couple of weeks leading up to December to start seeing some really good prices because I think Royal really tries to see what they can get for this time of year, realizes, of course, there's far less demand, and starts dropping prices. The third reason I really like December is there's lower humidity in the Caribbean, finally. Now, I live in Florida, and while there are advantages to living in Florida, I'm the first to admit I really don't like the humidity that comes with living in the tropics. And going down to the Caribbean in the warmer summer months, it can be uncomfortable, especially if you want to do outdoor activities. So even in the months of September and October, which are months that up north, you associate with fall and brisk weather. Now, down in the Caribbean, it's still humid as heck. The good news is by the time you get to December, you're starting to get some of those cold fronts penetrating even down into the tropics, and the effect is not so much that it gets cold down there, it just reduces the humidity, or at the very least, it makes it a little more comfortable being outdoors. And again, the advantage is it's simply more comfortable to be outdoors and do outdoor activities like tours and excursions and going to see historical sites. The next really good reason, speaking of the weather, to go on a December cruise is that the water temperatures are still warmer. So when you're talking about December, you might also be thinking about, how about January or February? Those months are great to go on a cruise as well. You're going to find lower prices, lower demand. The thing is, once you get into January or February in the Caribbean, generally speaking, you're talking about I'm using air quotes now, the coldest months of the year. And that also affects water temperature. When the air temperature drops, it takes longer for the water temperature to affect that. And let me be clear, if you're going on a cruise in December, January, or February in the Caribbean, it's going to be plenty warm to go in the ocean, especially once you get down into places like Cozumel or St. Thomas or Puerto Rico, places where the water temperature really isn't vary all that much and it'll certainly be comfortable enough. The difference is in December, especially early December, there hasn't been that much of a change yet. So I find it far more comfortable, relatively speaking, to go out at this time of year. One more thing about the weather, and again, this is a generalization, I can't promise you anything, but in the grand scheme of things, especially in the Bahamas, the time of year that's the most difficult for cruise ships to get in because of bad weather is actually January. And that's why December is even a better time to go on a cruise. So, a lot of cases, you get these winter storms that roll through the Caribbean. They're not like hurricanes or anything like that, but they can produce strong winds. And the effect is you usually have issues with cruise ships being able to dock because of those strong winds, particularly at Perfect Day at Coco Cay. We've seen that a lot. Actually, before Royal Caribbean built its dock there, it was really problematic. Even other ports have issues with weather, especially Tampa in the months of January and February, when there are vast temperature differences between the overnight and the afternoon, and that produces a lot of fog. And it's not uncommon for cruise ships to try to get it back into Tampa dealing with fog delays. Some ships have actually been delayed a day or so waiting for the fog to lift because it's simply unsafe. To be fair, there can be bad weather in December as well. I'm just simply saying that based on historical data, it seems like early December is that sweet spot. And again, this kind of adds to why I really like cruises in December. And another advantage that December has over, say, September or October, especially beyond pricing, is that there's more ships in the region. So once you get to about November or so, pretty much all the Royal Caribbean ships that were in Europe are back in the Caribbean. And so you have a lot more inventory to choose from when you're talking about a Caribbean cruise. Again, in September, May, and October, which are months you can find really great prices on a Caribbean cruise, you're also contending with a lot of ships being out in Europe already. And the issue is there's less choice and less places to go. But now, this is prime time and a lot more great choices for ships you might not have access to during those summer months. Now, of course, I've omitted really the latter half of December, and that's a really good and popular time actually to go on a cruise. The week of Christmas is probably the most popular time of the year to go on a cruise because a lot of people love the idea of celebrating holidays with family and friends on a cruise ship. And in addition to that, there are decorations, special events, etc. So what can you expect on a cruise during Christmas on a Royal Caribbean ship? Well, again, this depends when your cruise actually is. If your cruise actually goes over Christmas holiday, there will be special events. Otherwise, you can at least expect some decorations. Right after Thanksgiving, Royal Caribbean typically starts decorating its ships in public areas for the holidays. Typically, you'll see a lot of garland, Christmas trees, even menorah somewhere. And the idea is they add these decorations for kind of getting into the spirit of things. But there won't be any special events until you actually go on a cruise that goes over Christmas holiday. If your cruise happens to go over the actual day of Christmas, Royal Caribbean usually offers a few different Christmas-themed activities on board. Now, keep in mind that the exact offerings will vary from sailing to sailing, and this is just a generalization, but this is what we've seen in past years. Special appearances by Santa's elves, gingerbread cookie decorating, family story time, caroling, holiday movie screenings, craft making, ugly sweater contests, scavenger hunts, and even a special menu on the main dining room. So they'll have the usual menu, plus a holiday menu, which admittedly, in my opinion, is the same menu as the Thanksgiving menu, but I digress. There's also usually a priest on board to conduct mass services on both Christmas Eve and Christmas Day during these sailings. And if your cruise happens to go over New Year's Eve, well, then it's a giant party. Actually, New Year's Eve, one of my favorite ways to celebrate a cruise vacation celebration because you don't have to worry about driving or getting anywhere or running out of any food or drink. They've got it all for you. Basically, it's a giant party, and Royal Caribbean designates certain areas of the ship for different kinds of parties. So the Royal Promenade will have that Times Square New Year's Eve party celebration, whereas they'll have a club party if you want to have that, more of a casual party in other places, a pool deck party. Basically, you'll get a list of where all the parties are going, and you can come and go as you please. Some will be more crowded than others. Keeping in mind, by the way, that Royal Caribbean also upsells certain areas of the ship to give you like reserved access. As an example, on some ships in the past, we've seen at the pub on the Royal Promenade, to get a table there, you need to spend some extra money, usually a couple $100, in order to reserve a table. And that comes with, first of all, dedicated seating and also drink service and I think maybe even a bottle of champagne or something like that. But the bottom line is there are upsells beyond that in case you want to have a little more of a private experience, or at least more of an experience you don't have to worry about camping out for a spot. Suffice to say, once you get to midnight, there are balloon drops, there's a lot of celebrations. It is a giant party. Ultimately, December is a great time, especially the first 2 weeks of the month, to get some great deals and good choices on ships and probably decent weather in the Caribbean. Let me know your thoughts about going on a cruise in early December. I know it's not for everybody, especially considering, again, the time of year, school, work schedules, but if you can do it, it's one of my favorite times to go on a cruise. If you found this video helpful, hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications. That way, YouTube lets you know when we have a brand new video to share. This has been Matt from RoyalCaribbeanBlog.com, and we'll talk again real soon.